good afternoon. Welcome to this episode of Black Beat Podcast, where we take an unapologetic approach to the issues that concern the Black community. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Dr. Charlene Williams, the Director of Oregon's Department of Education. Charlene, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We appreciate your sister coming on. And there's so many hot topics right now in education, so I'm really just so eager and motivated to get into some of them. So let's try to get into this one on AI.
Okay, we're going there.
Let's talk about, Oregon was the first state that was given some guidance on this technology and AI. You care to speak a little bit to us about that?
I'm happy to speak about that. We know with AI and the way technology works, especially with our youth, they're often ahead of us. And so last school year, we started hearing things about Chat GPT. We saw different districts and different states coming out with guidance to ban AI use and those kinds of things. And we also started at the state level, I learned, because I got here in July. I learned that districts were reaching out to leaders. Hey, is there any guidance on AI? What is the department going to do in terms of offering some support to districts wrestling with this big question, this big moment that we're in?
It's a big one.
Fortunately, the U.S. Department of Education and its Office of Technology had already started some work in earnest, setting some principles and guidelines around AI, and we were able to work pretty much in partnership with them to lay the architecture for the guidance that we have now for our schools. AI is super critical because it's one of those things. If you don't get in early, you can easily get left behind and not know how.
But that's for just about a whole lot of things in America. Exactly. If you don't get in early, you get left behind.
Exactly, and so rather than run away from it, how do we approach it strategically, cautiously enough so that we can learn with this tool, be mindful of the implications like bias, right? Like, AI spits out what you feed it, right? So it's that old adage, garbage in, garbage out. So if we are not careful, we have to really be thoughtful about how information is mined and used in AI and that it doesn't perpetuate biases and those kinds of things.
So, Doctor, what were the main highlights to the policy?
Again, so that being one of them, walking this line of, approaching AI with curiosity and using it for its strengths. You can use AI as a tutor. Let's say you wanted to do something as fun as having AI teach you how to solve a system of equations. You can enter a prompt. It's called prompt engineering.
Wow.
So you can say AI or whatever you name your friendly AI. It might be Charles, you are a tutor and I need to learn how to solve a system of equations. So teach me how to solve a system of equations with 2 or 3 different methodologies. And AI has the potential to generate that lesson for you, or that one-on-one tutoring. So imagine for a student who may be struggling in the classroom, or maybe they've missed school. There's an opportunity with artificial intelligence when used wisely and with an adult, definitely supervised by an adult to inform their learning.
Are they going to do it for them?
Exactly.
What's going to be
But again, you have to monitor the inputs, right? So a lot of the technology companies and districts and schools are really mindful of how to be responsible with AI, ensuring that there are adults monitoring interactions with our students, ensuring we're following our safety protocols when it comes to the digital environment.
So you foresee some challenges that are ahead with this technology?
Absolutely. And so we try to, in our guidance, offer, here are some guardrails for consideration. Student safety being one of them. Always having adults at the center, managing and mitigating the interaction of children with the technology. And then how can you strategically leverage it to be more efficient so that you can give students the individual attention and supports they need. It's still so new, we're still learning, and it's evolving pretty quickly as we learn what it can do.
we've hearing a lot of conversation out there about the potential threat of AI. I foresee perhaps some really good things for students, but what do you think is going to happen? I mean, once this gets incorporated in, I mean, who are you going to be dealing with, the students or AI?
Right.
It's like, and when a student shows up and they have this perfect paper,
Oh.
but they ain't read a book, so, I mean, are you uncomfortable with this new technology?
Oh, absolutely. I would not say, oh, we got it figured out, or it's not going to be a problem. I think we're going to have to be careful. So one way a teacher worked around the perfect paper was using prompt engineering. She had her students turn in the iteration of their essay based on the dialogue they were having with AI. Let me see the prompt you entered into the AI system, and let me see the response it generated. Now refine your response, and watching them learn to become even higher level thinkers, more critical thinkers, because that's what really technology is pushing us.
Got you.
From just kind of being, doing some of the basic work, we have the same concern when calculators came out. No one's going to know how to do math because calculators are here, right?
Wow, okay.
But how do we think on a higher level and help expose what's happening with the AI tool? Again, why the adult needs to be present, and how do we leverage that to help our students lead the technology instead of being led by it?
So the teachers will have like a leash on this technology is what I'm hearing.
So to speak, they'll have some tools and parameters to help guide and provide some guardrails. Again,
good.
But it takes some intentionality. So our governor recently asked the state agencies to participate in a task force around AI, so that we can really put some of our best thinking and safety protocols around how we want to approach AI as a state enterprise. And so there's so much opportunity, and like you said, there's need to be cautious and thoughtful.
Yeah. I mean, because the idea of giving this AI the ability to think beyond someone influencing it kind of makes me a little
nervous. Yeah, absolutely. We start thinking about the movies and all the worst case scenarios.
Yeah, who am I talking to on the telephone?
Absolutely.
When you send me a picture, is it really you?
Yes,
all that kind of stuff. But
indeed.
Do you foresee any kind of partnerships going on with education and these technology companies, and how do you see the future of this going in terms of the relationship of how we've historically developed education and the organizations and companies that we partnered with and all that, and the shift in technology? Is education going to invest in technology now? I mean, companies or companies coming in? What are your thoughts about it?
Oh, you bring up some really excellent points. And AI is just one facet of our technology landscape. And so in Oregon, the semiconductor manufacturing is like our largest, our largest employer, and that kind of thing. Is so continuing to partner with our technology partners through our CTE experiences that we're able to provide students, and the curriculum that we are developing. We have a team of educators and leaders here at the department who just provided some, it's still, I think it's in the process of being submitted to the governor's office, a report on where we are in terms of like computer science education, and how do we elevate that in our schools. And so, I mean, we're at a pivotal moment when it comes to technology and computer science, and we have to lean into this conversation and leverage all partnerships and resources that we have.
Well, no better than you, Dr. Williams. I mean, you're young still. I mean, but just think about any of your predecessors. What would you think it would have been like with this conversation being introduced 10 years ago?
Goodness, right? To tell someone, that you're in dialogue with a person, when my daughter was in Barcelona, and to be FaceTiming with her via video phone, I mean, it just sounds, like nothing I would have imagined when I was a kid. That was something that I watched on television. But now things evolve in a matter of, it used to be years, but weeks and months. Our technology continues to evolve, which is why we have to be learners, learning with, as opposed to closing our doors and hoping these kinds of things go away? How do we engage with this?
My mind then started setting, and the horse done left its stall right about that. I mean, when I'm thinking about who I'm interviewing, someone receptive to this idea, and so tell me about this person. How'd you arrive here with this? This has to open up a little bit for me. I mean, you're so receptive to the technology and the new innovative ideas and thoughts, and which is rightly needed, I mean, at this point in time. So tell us, how'd you arrive here, Dr. Williams? I mean, tell me a little bit about your path of how you got to Oregon. And just share a little bit with the listeners, a little bit about who this person is. It's Dr. Charlene Williams. I mean, this person that is ready to receive innovation, new ideas, plowing ahead in the forefront of education in Oregon, and African American women, the first in its history. Come on, tell me a little bit. You got to tell me a little bit about where you came from and who you are.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I'll try to do this without weeping because it's a pretty emotional part of who I am and my story is, I think we were talking before this interview started. I started in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Wow.
And, I always joke with people, that's Michael Jordan's hometown, but he went to the wrong high school. But it worked out okay for him. I think he's doing okay. I went to NC State, no beef here.
Yeah, ain't nobody bad.
But, one of the things and why I think I have openness, right? Again, with caution, with the guardrails that we established in place, is very early on, a couple different things happened for me. When I was in middle school, there was a Region O Council for the Advancement of Minorities in Engineering. And these were a bunch of adults who got together and said, we want to do more to expose young African Americans to careers in STEM and for them to see themselves as mathematicians and scientists and engineers, etc. And so I was tapped to be in this amazing program where they partnered with K-12. They partnered with higher ed. They partnered with industry and brought all of these leaders of color together to create experiences and opportunities for folks like myself to have exposure to STEM like competitions and those kinds of things. And so fast forward to high school, it was no wonder that I was on then the math team and then hanging out with my math teachers after school and those kinds of things. And so one day in particular, you kind of have these moments in your journey. I had my pre-calculus and my algebra 2 teacher talking to me after school, I think after one of the meetings, and they said, Charlene, what are you going to do about the fact that they say women and minorities don't do well in mathematics?
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
one of them they say kind of things. You always get a little something in your ear.
A little something. And I said, well, I'll show them. I'll become a mechanical engineer. And they were really proud of that decision and thought it was a great one. But I always tell the second story I always tell is when Miss Taylor actually slipped on a French fry and she was out for a week. That's my pre-calculus teacher. She slipped and hurt her hip, right? So she's out for a week, and it was difficult during that time to find a substitute teacher that could just walk in cold and teach pre-calculus. So they found a substitute teacher. The teacher didn't know pre-calculus, but she tapped the sub and said, Charlene knows the math. You tell her she can teach the class as long as you manage it.
Wow.
So in high school, I began teaching pre-calculus for a week, and it just cemented this idea that if I'm really going to make a they say difference and disrupt this narrative that women and minorities cannot do well in mathematics, and minorities was the term they used at the time. I know we're global majority right now, so I just want to clarify. That the difference is going to be made in the classroom. And so we started talking about what does it take to impact education so that more folks who look and think or have this experience can see themselves as mathematicians and scientists and engineers and AI specialists, I guess, today in today's age. And we talked about the classroom level, then we talked about the school level. Then we talked about the district level. We didn't have this state level conversation, but I believe it was a part of the divine plan for me to be sitting here today,
Wow.
impacting education.
So when you got to Oregon, where'd you land? What was the landing strip? Where'd you land? Was it in the classroom?
This is good. That's a good question. So, it's part of the trickery of my husband saying, let's move to the Northwest. And
well, not a bad decision.
it wasn't. He said, we'll be out there 3 years. This was in 1998.
Gotcha.
And, as if you do the math,
yeah.
it was a little longer than 3 years. Okay. And so, he brought us out here, but their company, just real parenthetically, I just want to say, in that moment, their company did recruiting and retaining of diverse hiring in a way like I just don't see consistently. They took care of us as a family. They made sure, I knew where to get my hair done, my child care. We had affinity groups and spaces before I even knew what affinity even was. And so through a full year of really kind of nurturing and nursing us as a family and integrating us into the Northwest culture and him into the community culture, there's no reason why we're still here. Because they did some of that intentional work, which I think is important, especially when we're trying to interrupt the thing says, right?
Yes.
So he is a mechanical engineer.
Wow. Y'all had to kind of figure it out.
And here I go. My first job was actually at the Youth Employment Institute. My heart was really to go to students pushed out of the education system with this kind of, at the time, I think I was still dealing with a little bit of my own saviorism and thinking like I can make anybody learn math and that, well-intentioned, but not nuanced enough in terms of really how do we disrupt meritocracy and ensure that we build systems so that students aren't pushed out and we're working on the kids and not the system. Right. So I did some of that work and was learning in the journey about how to be bigger impacting. So, I had the privilege of working with Joe McFerrin at POIC for a number of years and really learned so much about leadership and Black excellence from that experience and from his leadership, which I carried into the public school system when I got the opportunity to work at Roosevelt High School.
Right on. Well, you paint a story most people can't paint. At least people of color that come to the Northwest can't paint the same kind of. Because most of them leave. They come here, they have no place to associate with, no identity. And even for myself, in the beginning, I came, at least I knew where to go get a haircut. Because I think that was the canvas for me, getting the rest of the way, right? But surely you had some trials.
Absolutely.
What were some of the things that you could share with some of our listeners that were some difficulties for you to assimilate, to adjust, to get, other than the fact coming to the Northwest, the biggest, whitest state in the city, so forth and so on, in America, so they say, but that will soon change, surely. But what were some of your trials? Did you want to run away? Did you want to go back home?
Interesting enough, I think I'm wired to, want a challenge and take on a challenge. But that said, yes, there were definitely some things that I was up against. One of the challenges, and I just want to call out the beautiful colleagues I had in partnership from leadership at Roosevelt, teachers, parents, students that all really helped shape the story that I'm able to tell today. So, when I tell the Roosevelt story, it's not me, it's we. It's you, like all the people who leaned in and helped us see the truth, speak the truth, and deal with the truth that was happening there, right? And so when I think of challenge, when it comes to disrupting narratives and outcome gaps and experiences, one of the challenges sometimes how we even believe in our children. And what has happened in some of our communities that have experienced either disbelief, disinvestment, or whatever have you, and working upstream to kind of remedy and rectify some of that work. And so to have families lean in with us to say, we are more than a test score. We value education. We believe in what our children can do. I literally had people telling me, I'll never forget, one of my vice principals attended a meeting where they were like, well, you have all those Mexican kids over there, just build a construction program. So you had themes and stereotypes about what students at our school should do versus they would never say that on some other campuses.
Yes.
And so fighting some of those negative narratives and replacing them with experiences. So we partnered intentionally with colleges and universities. We sent our students and families on college tours because we believe that it's one thing if a child leaves a home, but when you take the whole family and you're saying, hey, we're going to go over here to Western Oregon and we're going to tour the campus and we're going to talk about what it means to fill out financial aid. We're going to talk about all of these different things, right? Or if you're undocumented, how do you access college and those kinds of things, really getting, removing barriers and deficit thinking and trying to create real pathways that students could access things. And so and it took being creative because when you're in a system, what I kept running up against sometimes is, well, we never done it that way, or that's not how we always do it. And so we partnered with a lot of the people in our community and our educators who were like, we don't have to do it that way. Let's find a way, let's make a way.
Wow, sister, you're long overdue, and as I remember the first time I met you, I said the same thing to you. You're long overdue, right? And it's the challenges. But okay, let's see if we can drop some rubber on the road, though, sis. I mean, in light of those challenges, I mean, here you are today. You're at the helm. You're innovative. You got courage. You're courageous. You got courage. You got a few things working for you, right? You got smarts and the whole thing. Well, here we are. Oregon is experiencing some teacher unrest and some difficulty within that structure. The strike. What is your perception of all of that? The striking and what do you foresee up ahead of us in relationship to that stuff? If you don't mind, just that, because I mean, after all, it's kind of current, and is it settled? Are we at rest at this point in time, or are we still, squaring off and trying to shape this thing?
That is such a good question, and I want to treat that with the respect it deserves. That number one, we are in unprecedented times as an education system. Education is so tender right now, especially post COVID, post George Floyd, the battles that our educators are facing, both in the classroom or from the helm at those principals leading schools and district leaders wrestling with resources, we have shifted from a traditional model of public education, where it's, get your reading, writing, math, to a whole child model, where students are showing up, and adults too, stressed and with challenges we haven't faced before. Now, there are some spaces and communities that have been able to bounce back because they have, different sets of resources and challenges and experiences, but there continues to be several where the strain on the system is creating ripples, like when you look at a strike, you are looking at a symptom of the system, right, that needs to be repaired. We got to look at resourcing it differently. I speak to educators who are hiring school psychs and nurses and behavior specialists, and none of those positions I just named are in a classroom. And we also need to hire more educators for classrooms, more para-educators for classrooms, more, and so when you have a funding model and a system built on, decades of one model and need for education into this new era that's saying we need to think differently. We need to resource our schools differently. We need to partner with our leaders and educators differently so they have what they need and it's not pitting people against each other.
Gotcha.
And as state leaders, our governor thankfully has set forth in her memo about our 3 priorities about revisiting that funding model, looking at social emotional wellness, and then what we can do as a department is make the resources available so people can all see the same thing have access to the same information, have the same understanding, so that we can kind of help minimize some of the tensions where we can.
You know, Doctor, I don't know if you know this or not about the University of Oregon moving into Concordia's campus up in Northeast. I don't know the Balmer.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, not enough probably.
And part of my background and history of that was working in mental health for a long time and looking at trauma-oriented issues that related to some of our culturally specific communities. What are your thoughts about their intent? As I understand their intent is to create a new certification that would allow these certified people to be a part of the education institutions and just be a part of community wellness types of situations. What are your thoughts about having, and even though it sounds like it's more conflict, because education's always had mental health people working within those constructs. What are your thoughts about this new thought about innovation in terms of introducing this in a much more significant way?
Interesting. I think the field, and when I say field, the field of education definitely needs to look at how we certify and prepare our educational professionals, for the current needs going forward and going forward. And social emotional wellness being a big part of it. I think I mentioned in a previous conversation how one of the ways we were able to make the gains at Roosevelt was we intentionally hired folks who had an MSW and really leaned into serving families through a trauma-informed lens and the mental health supports, because again if we're gonna if children are going to show up and be successful in the classroom, we talk about how brain science works. When you're stressed and your cortisol is high, which means your cognition or your opportunity to learn is low. And so we have to take those precautions to make sure you can show your full self.
Yeah.
That we've dealt with the mental health, that we've dealt with the trauma as best we can.
Right.
And it could be schools, it could be in partnership with agencies that, are even more equipped to do it. How do we leverage partnerships, if it's the Balmer Institute or the health clinic or whoever it is, I think we need to be partnering and strategizing about what that partnership looks like.
Thank you. Something you mentioned earlier around Black excellence. A little bit more about that Portland School District and what's this whole issue around Black excellence? Does the Center for Black Excellence?
I'm not familiar with the
connected with that.
We are not directly connected with that work. I think a little bit of my story earlier around the Regional Council for the Advancement of Minorities in Engineering just kind of shows what happens when people get intentional and say, okay, we want to address some of the disparity that we are seeing in terms of opportunity and experience and outcomes for Black youth, to have concentrated resources and efforts around what it looks like. So again, the partnership with K-12 or higher education or industry leaders around what does it take, how do we all come together and improve experiences and outcomes for kids, with some very intentional work on closing those gaps that we have seen year after year after year.
Dr. Williams, this has been very informative for me, and I really do appreciate you giving me this opportunity. But usually what I do is, in these interviews, I generally ask the interviewee, did I miss something that you felt? Because in retrospect, in looking back across the terrain, is there something that you would have thought you're thinking that I should have asked you, or you would have liked to share?
Yeah, I love that question.
Yeah.
I love that question, and no. There's just a couple things that I just want to say. Number one, I have been about and will always be about each and every child's academic success. And so in partnership with our governor, we have our early literacy initiative where we know that the stronger start a student has, the stronger finish they have, right? And so we have some deep investments in that right now. And so as people are, engaging with their school communities to be in partnership and curious about how districts are participating in that early literacy initiative. But, so our 3 priorities that I've helped name for this agency and with the governor's office is, academic excellence. Because first and foremost, right, our kids have to be thriving academically. And right now that focus being on early literacy. The second priority is belonging and wellness, which you've definitely talked about quite a bit. We've identified members of our team across different departments, and we're reaching across agencies, OHA, DHS, different ones. How do we partner as a government enterprise to better serve our communities and families?
The definition of holistic, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That's the actual definition.
Absolutely, and because it's real. We are shifting to this whole child model, and we have to be honest about it, and we have to own the parts we can own, and then, deliver the parts we can. And the final piece that I think kind of ties all the bows together is accountability.
Yeah, big one.
And that's a big one. Yeah. And having come from Roosevelt, where I think there were some pros and cons to the model that was used federally and the way accountability can be used to shame and blame.
Yeah.
I think we have an opportunity to have a system that could actually be inspirational. If we think about,
Lord, I love that word, be inspired.
What do we dream for our children? How we give them the resources to get there, and how do we support the educators with the skills, tools, resources, monitoring, and feedback that they need in order to get students there? So those are our 3.
Doc, I'm so glad that we've had this opportunity to have this, even in light of something that I've seen that the governor's office produced, the study that last. What was it? Deficiency study? A disparity study. And the disparity study, where we find that we are actually going backwards in the Department of Contracting with the state, where we are 0.1% of the amount of money spent last year went to African American communities and things of that nature. So, Doc, listen, I am so. Girl, I would like to chop it up a different kind of way with you on this, but I'm just so glad that we were able to articulate some of the actual concerns, and you were able to share some of the inspirations and hope that your leadership is going to bring about for us as we move into the future. Hey, y'all, listen here. This episode for me has been one of those special ones, and I hope that those people who are viewing this episode and listening to it, you get your act together and understand that somebody's strong at the helm, and she's actually looking to initiate some things and improve some conditions. So she can use all the support that she can get from y'all. So again, I appreciate y'all coming back again. This is the Black Beat Podcast. Y'all come in and y'all subscribe to Black Beat Podcast here as we're moving on. So we're going to have a lot more of these exciting interviews as we go into 2024. So again, thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you very much. And we appreciate you. You have no idea. It's a good person. Thank you again.